2018. The Dow is up 151 points. This is CBS News.
Need to hire quality candidates fast? You need Indeed, the end-to-end hiring solution. Attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
With news on WAUK, The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles, and here's what you need to know. A special election is being held today in the 24th Assembly District seat. Voters in parts of Ozaukee, Washington, and Waukesha counties will have the opportunity to choose between two candidates, Democrat Bob Tatterson and Republican Paul Melitik. The seat became vacant after former Assemblyman Dan Knodel won a special election for a state Senate seat earlier this year. The DNR isn't sure when a popular trail will be back open. Melissa Kay has more.
Due to a sinkhole caused by recent rainfall, a section of the Hank Aaron State Trail is currently closed between 76th Street and 89th Street. The sinkhole poses a
January, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
It's easy to listen to your favorite local radio station anytime.
What if I just, instead of giving out the talk and text line, just started giving up Robin Voss's number all the time? 844-96-party. What is it?
Write it down. 608-237-9163. Call now.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Who do you think is to blame for the student loan crisis? Is it schools? Is it banks? Is it the government? Is it the students themselves? I ask because there is a survey out that asked young Americans who they think is responsible for student loans not being forgiven. And basically right now, that survey says they're piling the blame on their student debt balances on conservatives, largely the Supreme Court. And this was a survey poll done by Generation Lab and provided exclusively to Axios. And so, but I feel like those are two different questions. There's a question of who's blaming whom for the lack of student loan forgiveness versus a question about how do we get in this mess in the first place? And so I would love to hear from you more on the latter of when you think about the fact that there are tens of millions of borrowers in the US who collectively owe more than $1 trillion, why did this happen? 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-party. I certainly don't blame the students themselves because I don't think you see that. It's like blaming all the people who took the crappy mortgages in the lead up to the housing crisis in 2008 and saying, well, you should have been smarter. You should have known that was a bad loan. And I feel like it's just interesting to think because, the problem with asking the question that the survey asked is I think there's a lot of people who don't think student loans should be forgiven at all. And so there is no blame to be had. But interested to hear from you. Who do you think is to blame for the student loan crisis? 844-967-2789. But as far as that survey goes, 47% said the Supreme Court was responsible. This is for the lack of student loan forgiveness. 38% said the Republicans were responsible. 10% said Biden was responsible. And 5% said Democrats were responsible. So I thought that was interesting to think potentially what that could mean for 2024. Jane Madnair, what do you think?
Wow. I understand not wanting to blame the students entirely because, again, understanding interest and what that's going to mean down the road. But boy, and I think you make a good point about the housing crisis, the mortgage crisis leading up to the crash in 2008, where, like you said, the people who were selling these mortgages knew they were bad. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's tough. It's tough.
But here's the thing. So in what situation does a bank give an 18-year-old a loan to start a business without a solid business plan?
Good point. I mean, isn't the whole lending screwed up?
Oh yeah, I mean all of that's screwed up as far as like one, there's like predatory loans. There's the fact that the interest rates can't be, and like you can refinance your house, but you can't refinance your student loans.
Right.
And you can also never file for bankruptcy. And so that's where it comes into the government and the fact of like how they've decided to set up these loans that are so different from everything else that we do when it comes to the banking system. There's the fact that when it comes to public schools, at least in Wisconsin, how much of the share of publicly funded schools are not being publicly funded. So then thus the tuitions go up. There's the fact that the colleges themselves are becoming more expensive because of the administrators and how much like they spend on their marketing in a new building in order to be competitive and try to attract more students. And so that's what I mean. There's a lot of blame to go around. And I just don't know if it's as much about personal responsibility and laying squarely at the feet of tens of millions of people who were told you have to go to college if you want to
be successful. Yep. 844-967-2789, 844-96-party. Karina from Milwaukee. Good morning, Karina. What do you think?
Good morning, guys. I'm lucky enough. I've been into two different educational systems. I was as a student and I was as an instructor. And I tell you this, education of your people, it's an investment. You see, it's investment. It's investment in your people, in your future education. Not making a business out of it, not earning interest on the loans. I give you an example. In Russia, right? Because I don't know any other system what have a national education. And actually, while I was listening to you, I would probably go back and look how Britain or France or any other country who's offering national education, how did they got to this point? I don't know, but I know how it's happening in Russia because of the revolution. Now look, This is a different mentality in Russia because you spend money for a future for your kids, and those kids picking up profession and trying to figure out what they can be best at for government money, because the government is the ultimate parent, right? Ultimate taking care of, ultimately responsible for the country because we pay our government taxes to do that for us. So basically, when you are in the higher education in Russia, you have, first of all, it's free. Secondary, when you in school like 8 to 10 hours. It's your working day practically, and everybody consider you a working person when you are in the college. Government also will pay you statements depending on your grades, so you don't have to look for a work and pay attention to your
That's interesting.
education. In this country, education is something what would be used for a future, your future, right?
Mhm.
So when you go to college, they telling you, well, you can get this job, this job, this job. This is what's going to pay you this. This is the job what it's going to pay you that. And when you're taking a loan, it's obvious that you will be able to pay it off. Well, the thing is, if the system would be adjusted to loans and salaries, then it's a possible. Then there is a question: why we're doing that when we can offer free education? We have enough money. If we're giving $3 billion to Ukraine, we have enough money to offer at least a part of national education as well as the healthcare to invest in your future. This government do not invest in their people. This government doesn't want smart and healthy population. They want dumb and sick. And this is why it's coming from the conservative and Republicans, because you can see what they're doing. They're removing
Absolutely.
money from education. They're
Thanks so much for the-
removing money from healthcare.
Thanks so much for the call, Karina. I think that I mean I agree as far as the investment in your people, and so many European countries, it is an actual public education if you choose to keep going. And so it sounds like, at least from Karina's point of view, this is something that the government of putting the financial burden as far as it's your investment. And again, it comes back to, I think, the ethos of individualism and personal responsibility that we have in this country. But collectively, I don't know if it's working out. What do you think? 844-967-2789.
Jack from Merrimack. Good morning, Jack. What do you want to say?
Good morning. Well, over the years, probably since around 1980 and Reagan's "the government isn't the answer, the government's the problem" philosophy, Republicans, and it's been primarily Republicans, have cut back in support for all kinds of public education. The universities have been public universities, that is to say, state colleges and state universities have been particularly hard hit. Now I admittedly, I'm an old guy, but I remember thinking when I was in college, oh, this is great. A person could live on $1,000 a year, go to school full time. It's a wonderful system. When my son graduated from a UW system school, just the tuition alone was close to $50,000. Now I can understand easily how a person could end up working full time during the summer and even part time during the school year, and still end up with $20,000, $30,000 or more dollars in debt. And that isn't the main UW Madison school. That's one of the UW system schools. Madison was closer to 75,000. So that's the situation that we've been put in by this individual responsibility thing. In other words, don't let the government support anything that benefits anybody except the billionaires. Sorry, but that's that's kind of the way it is.
No, I totally understand. Thanks so much for the call, Jack. But we would love to hear from you as well, as far as who is to blame mostly, because there's probably a lot of blame to go around for the fact that tens of millions of people owe more than $1 trillion just in student loans in this country. Can it all be summed up to personal responsibility, or is it the combination of government decisions, the banks, how the schools themselves? 844-967-2789. We will take your texts, take your calls, take your comments on the live stream when we come back. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Don't you know I'll always be your babe?
Gee, I'll go thank the dean.
Hey, you're the one who signed your life away.
Yeah, when I was 17, I couldn't comprehend my fate, much less define an interest rate. I wish it was a thorn's fate, but now it's
strategy includes your hopes and dreams. What matters most to you? For over 100 years, Thriven has helped clients like you find financial solutions for life's important goals. Explore a full range of options, from financial advice and investments to insurance, banking, and generosity programs. To have a heart-to-heart about your finances, contact Mandy Roberts, who you may recognize as Mandy Wright. Call her at 715-470-1303. 715-470-1303. Mandy Roberts proudly serves the central Wisconsin area. For more details, visit thriven.com/disclosure.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon with the high of 80. Winds out of the west, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Mainly clear tonight. Lows level off around 57. Lots of sunshine tomorrow. Highs around 83. Chance for scattered storms Thursday with highs in the low 80s. Mainly sunny skies and calm Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 68 degrees.
College was incredible, it really was so great. I made a lot of friends and I went on a few dates. Now I'm getting married, man, wow, that is so cool. But I wish I could spend on my wife the money spent for school. Yeah, we all got loans, buddy. When I was a young boy, I thought that school was free.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. Did you have some fun finding some of these songs this morning?
I did. There are a number of songs about school loans.
Well, as we've said, it is probably indicative because of there's that many songs and parody songs written about it, because it is a big problem that a lot of people are stuck with. And I'm asking, I mean, obviously this is a big existential question that is not going to get solved in 2 segments of this radio show, but I am interested because there is a survey, as far as I think there's going to be political ramifications based on that survey, of who young people are blaming for the lack of student loan forgiveness. And it was by Generation Lab and provided to Axios, and I was reading about it this morning. And basically, between the Supreme Court and Republicans, it's like 75, like 85%.
Wow.
Well, not 85. So it's 47%, the Supreme Court, 38% Republicans, and only 15% between Biden and the Democrats. And so, and I think there's a lot of people out there who don't think any blame, because there was a lot of people who were really upset about the original proposal from Biden that got overturned by the Supreme Court, and who did not think that their taxes should bail out people who had student loans. And so I'm more interested in, I guess, there's probably a debate to be had if you think it's a crisis whatsoever, but it's hard to look at that number and think that it's not a problem. Maybe a crisis is escalated, but who you think is to blame for it? Like how we got in this mess, and I guess to a certain extent, who's responsible for fixing it then? 844-967-2789. We have a couple comments on the live stream. One from Tony Zimmerman. We need to revamp the higher education to be a little more like Germany, where apprenticeships are used more. So many jobs just retrain students to do things the company wants anyway. I think that's true. I think there's a lot of skills. Like, I try to think about what I studied in college, and I defend my major. I defend the things that I learned there and how it helped me throughout my career. But most of my first job out of school was cold calling and being able to navigate Salesforce.com, which I certainly did not learn in school. I got another one from Josh Egan. It's a broken system. The cost to attend has skyrocketed the last 20 years. The government loan amount with a reasonable interest rate is minuscule, so people have to go out and get private bank loans. Those rates are so much higher, and that's where the problem arises. Factor in people who maybe chose a school that they really couldn't afford and could have gone somewhere for the same degree for far less. So everyone has a bit of the blame to shoulder.
844-967-2789 if you want to check in. John from the Falls, good morning. To be honest, there's plenty of blame to go around. Everyone is at least partly responsible to one degree or another. That being said, I've heard some students are paying 9% interest on student loans, and those loans are exempt from bankruptcy forgiveness. Let's at least be fair and say that if business owners and everyday Americans can have their debts wiped out by bankruptcy protection, students with loans should have the same protections. I honestly think the best way around all of this is to cut out the bank middleman and have the government directly issue loans to students at 0% interest, since as a country, we need people with the skills to make our economy and our lives better. Also, if we're going to let people and businesses get away with not paying back their PPP loans, there's no reason we shouldn't be doing debt forgiveness for people that have gone to college.
And I think that's the thing where I get hung up, both on the original proposal but from Biden, because to me, it always just felt like a Band-Aid. And until you actually solve the structural problem of there's always going to be a new wave of students, that number, that actual quantitative number of how many people are going to go to college is going to go up and down, but there are people who are going to continue to go and continue to take out loans. And until you change the actual structure of how those loans are financed, it's just, you just paid off some people's without actually fixing the problem. And so that was always my problem with the solution as it was, is it didn't change anything as far as the actual process goes. And even the new plan that seems to have gotten a lot less pushback. Granted, it's like the difference between $400 billion and $40 billion. But I mean, last Friday, Biden basically put out a plan B and said he's going to alleviate $39 billion of debt for 800,000 borrowers, which is a much smaller proposal than the original one. But seemingly, at least from what I've read, it hasn't been nearly the same kind of pushback at all. And I don't know if the details of it is because it's so much smaller that people just don't have as much of a problem with it. And there's not the same kind of immediate amount of lawsuits of that you can't do this and we're going to take you to court. But it seems like a lot less pushback. But again, it's certainly helping the people who have the loans right now. But I don't see the effort to change how it's structured from anybody. We keep debating about what to do with the debt that exists, but not to how to curb future debt.
844-967-2789. Tom from LA. Tom, we only got a minute. Go ahead.
All right, real quick. Kristen, who is the government?
We are the government, Tom.
Okay. So we the people are the government because we pay taxes into the government. Okay? So therefore, what happened was we the people lost government when Citizens United, Buckley versus Vallejo, and First National Bank versus Bellotti came along and made it where politicians could be bought off by big corporations and pay from a 70% tax back in Eisenhower's day to down to 15%.
Tom, we got to let you go. We're coming up against the break.
All right. Thanks for the call, Tom. As always, when we come back, Dan Shafer is here to recombobulate specifically about highway deconstruction. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Man, we didn't care. Time to make a payment. Instead, we both forbear.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News Brief. Former President Trump says his legal team's been told he's being investigated for allegedly trying to undo his loss in the 2020 election. CBS's Scott McFarland.
The target letter indicates you're not just a component of an investigation or a subject of an investigation, but the epicenter of it. So often when somebody receives a target letter in a federal investigation, they are eventually charged with a federal crime.
CBS News confirms an American soldier due to face military discipline is in North Korean custody after crossing into the country during a tour of the DMZ. CBS's Haley Ott.
The South Korean authorities reacted very swiftly, found out who the man was, and then quickly brought everybody else on the tour group out of the area.
More than a dozen states are still under a suffocating heat dome. In Phoenix, it'll be day number 19 of temps 100 degrees or higher. Yvonne Hausman has no AC.
I just got physically sick, passing out, just so lightheaded.
CBS News Brief. I'm Deborah Rodriguez.
Your hometown radio, refreshed, keeping you informed, entertained, and connected on the Civic Media Network, civicmedia.us.
With news on WAUK, The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles, and here's what you need to know. Milwaukee County residents may face an increase in county taxes as 2 county board committees have approved a plan to raise the sales tax from 0.5% to 0.9%.
This is a moment for leadership. This is a moment for people to be decisive.
Milwaukee County Board Supervisor Sean Rowland says the proposal aims to prevent budget cuts to essential services like public transit and health and human services. The full County Board of Supervisors will make their final decision July 27th. A 54-year-old man from Brookfield was found dead in a wooded area behind the baseball fields at Buena Park in New Berlin yesterday. The man's body was taken to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. And based on initial findings, police say there's been no signs of foul play and there is no danger to the community. For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Attention, Wisconsin veterans.
Hello, I'm Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin. If you are a veteran struggling to pay for rent, utilities, or other life-sustaining services, I want you to know that the Veterans Rental Assistance Program is here to help. You have already made a most noble sacrifice. You shouldn't have to continue doing so. We are here to support you. The Veterans Rental Assistance Program was created by and for people living in Wisconsin, with benefit approvals being issued to veterans in just days, not months. It's never easy to ask for assistance, but rest assured, we're here to help. You've always been there for us. We want you to know that we're here for you. Call 833-WIS-VRAP. That's 833-947-8727, or visit vrapwi.com. On behalf of the state of Wisconsin, thank you.
It's the Max Inc. Radio Concert Series at the Waukesha County Fair, Thursday, July 20th on the Whammy and Guitars for Vet stage, featuring Iron Plow, Karma Shotgun, and Talent. Music starts at 7:30, hosted by WAUK's Don Brown. The Waukesha County Fair on the Whammy and Guitars for Vet stage. Find more info at guitars4vets.org. Presented by WAUK 540 AM, The Shaw 101 FM, and Max Inc. Radio. We are local music.
It's never personal, only politics. The Devil's Advocates Radio Show with Dom and Cruz. Weekdays from 4 until 6 on your...
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. What were you just listening to, Jane?
That is called Discombobulation.
Ah.
By Hans Zimmer. Yes.
There we go. We might have found Dan Shafer's new theme song for every week when he joins on Tuesdays to recombobulate with Discombobulate by Hans Zimmer.
I've got a new walk-up song. This is pretty great. It's like a walk up the plate.
Have you heard that one before?
I have not. No.
There you go.
It's from Sherlock Holmes, the movie.
Okay.
The one with Jude Law?
Yes.
And okay. All
yep,
right.
and Robert Downey Jr. Yes.
It's bouncy.
That's a deep cut, Jane.
It's
I like it.
mischievous.
Yeah.
Dan Shafer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So I'm excited, as someone who lives in Milwaukee, I'm excited to have this conversation. I'm also cognizant that this is a very Milwaukee topic. And so trying to keep it high level in the theme of, I think, like how communities are built or change over time, because this is something that's not unique to Milwaukee in the fact that like public input, big decisions, big infrastructure decisions. And of course, what I'm talking about is the conversation around tearing down I-794, which is the strip of highway that basically goes directly into some of the Summerfest grounds and cuts through downtown. And now yesterday there was another meeting. I don't know how many people were there. I know you and Isaac and Urbanist Twitter was there.
Urbanist Twitter was well represented at this event yesterday that was held at Marquette University. It was a kind of morning-long event talking about 794 and also reflecting on the city's history with tearing down freeways with the Park East Freeway from about 20 years ago. So Peter Park, who was part of Mayor John Norquist's administration and who really kind of led the effort to tear down the Park East Freeway, was there kind of as the keynote speaker and reflecting on, removing that Park East Freeway, which for those who might not remember that time in Milwaukee, it was a freeway that essentially went right through where Fiserv Forum is now and kind of emptied out. On the east side, where you have the Pick and Save at East Point Commons and Points East Pub and a few other notable places that people, even outside of Milwaukee, might recognize. So it was basically a fast track to the supermarket. People lost their minds over it. They're saying it was going to ruin the city. It didn't. It opened up all of it, acres and acres of developable land. And now what we have there is Fiserv Forum and the Deer District, Trade Hotel, all sorts of different things. So removing a freeway and developing it to benefit the city is kind of the basic concept here. And they're talking about how to, apply the lessons learned there to 794, because I think, as Park mentioned in his comments, does anybody miss the Park East Freeway? Did it really make a difference for congestion in Milwaukee? Not really. So basically what we're talking about now is removing that stretch of 794 that basically goes between the Marquette interchange and the lakefront and kind of sits right in between downtown and the Third Ward. And this is, really, when you zoom out and think about it, this is some of the most valuable land in the state. It's right between Milwaukee River and Lake Michigan, right between downtown and the Third Ward. These are some of the fastest growing parts of the city, but we have this big freeway kind of running through it. And as the presenters really talked about, in the event yesterday, this is mostly a freeway that is used as an extended on-ramp. There are many other ways to get on 94 going west or get on the Hone Bridge to head south. This effort would not impact the Hone Bridge at all. I think that's been a point of confusion for a lot of people as this rollout has been unveiled. But it would really open up a lot of land to really do something differently in downtown Milwaukee.
So who does this big of a decision, because it is a big decision, come down to? As like who needs to be involved and what would need to be approved for this to actually move forward?
Yeah, this would involve multiple levels of government to make this decision, and it would in large part be driven by the State Department of Transportation. And the State Department of Transportation has put out designs with a number of options. And so if you look at if you look at their website, you can kind of take a look through the 794 things. There's an option to kind of replace it as is. There's an option to improve it and keep that connection to the Hone Bridge. And then there's the option to remove the freeway entirely. The Hone Bridge would essentially just end where it does, right along the lakefront at Michigan Avenue there. And so there are going to be public involvement meetings coming up right at the beginning of August 1st and 2nd in Milwaukee to talk about, what people might want to see with this freeway. And, I think as we've talked about at the Recombobulation area, the effort to convert the Stadium Freeway to a boulevard, and that effort is ongoing. That study is ongoing. We will see some sort of renderings or proposals for that this fall. On the east end of town here, we've got this 794 debate really heating up. And I think this is a really, really interesting one to think about, how the built environment is going to work in that part of Milwaukee going forward.
We're talking to Dan Shafer for our weekly segment of Recombobulating with Dan Shafer every Tuesday. And today we're talking, at least starting with the conversation around tearing down the 794 freeway that leads basically right to the lakefront. And so it comes down to the State Department or the Department of Transportation. Through my echo chamber, I definitely hear all the arguments of why we should do this. I see some of the examples of it looking like a boulevard and the different things that could be developed down there and the different like walkability that gets created between, basically where the Third Street Avenue, Market Hall and Public Market is now, and that whole strip becoming a lot more walkable. It would mean there's no more pickleball courts by the Public Market that that's the pickleball people.
That's going to end it right there. The pickleball people.
But I guess what is the opposition to it, and does it, if you're thinking objectively, does it have any legs?
Well, I think some of the opposition that we've seen from it has been from communities south of downtown who enjoy the Hone Bridge connection to I-94 there. I think, we've seen some mayors from South Milwaukee or Cudahy or some of those South suburban communities that say, hey, we don't want to lose our connection to the Hone. And I think there has been some confusion about how this would impact the Hone Bridge. Some people are saying, why would you tear down the Hone Bridge? Well, that's not what this is proposing. I think there's still a little bit of confusion over what exactly this is. But I think, some people do really like the convenience of being able to get around through the highways there. But I think one of the interesting points that came up from the speech from Peter Park at the event yesterday was really reflecting on the very beginning of the interstate highway system. When the Eisenhower administration back in the 50s implemented this process, they were talking about using it to connect cities and not go through cities. And I think there were so many decisions that followed when the country was really building all of these highways and interstates all over the place, that so many of these highways cut through cities, and so many of these highways cut through cities in communities of color too. And I think that really there's a lot of history with that in Milwaukee, particularly with I-43, really destroying a lot of the earliest, Black neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee. And I think that is an important part of this conversation too, that was not really the original vision of the interstate highway system. It was going from city to city, not through cities, right?
That's super interesting to think about. And because is there other cities, like as someone who's lived in multiple big cities. Like LA certainly has a lot of LA is also huge. It has a lot of freeways through the city. Manhattan does not, mostly just because you can't, and it's basically up and down either side of the island. And I'm trying to think, San Francisco
That
doesn't
was one
really
example
either.
used. They had like that double decker freeway that was kind of along the water there, and they removed that, and now it's just like the part of the waterfront that you associate with San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so they did have like kind of a freeway removal there. A similar thing in Seattle where they removed a freeway next to the water. That is a very new project, so we're hard to see exactly what's happening with that. But one of the examples that they talked about as well is just there's no example of a freeway getting built through a city and it improving the neighborhoods that it's built through. Like it just absolutely ravages these neighborhoods when you build a freeway through it. So I think, part of it is reversing the mistakes of the past, but part of it is, examining a more compelling future, and that would, give people options, not just by car, getting there with transit and bikes and pedestrians and all sorts of different things. And this is a part of Milwaukee that has grown significantly. Like the downtown Walker's Point East Side part of the city has grown. I think one of the statistics that they shared yesterday, it has grown almost 25% in the last decade. And so that, Milwaukee is losing population, but I think that part of the city went from like 30,000 population to like a 37, 38,000 population. That's a pretty significant increase in a decade. This is part of the city that is really growing rapidly. And, you want to leverage that growth and that opportunity by, opening up more land. And Milwaukee really needs to build more housing. The state of Wisconsin in general needs to build more housing. There is a, really low vacancy rates in Milwaukee and Madison that, compares to a lot of these coastal cities that are having a lot of housing crunches now too. So this would open the opportunity to build more housing. And then we're seeing a lot of, stuff happening downtown where we're converting old office buildings to housing as well. We really, really have an opportunity to build more housing that will, bring rents down, give more people some more opportunities. And I think that can be really a benefit for the city as a whole.
Eric from Tosa checking in on the text line. Take down 794 and rebuild Milwaukee. I lived off Brady near the Park East Freeway, and I haven't missed it since. But that is one criticism that I've heard, Dan, is that when they took down the Park East and they opened up that land, yes, but it took 10 to 15 years where it basically sat vacant until Fiserv Forum came along.
It did, but we did have a global financial recession in that period as well. So they took it down. What was it, 2003 that they finally took it down, and then they didn't get the Bucks Arena to really kind of commit to being part of it until 2014, 15 or so. But right in the middle of that, I think they had plans to develop it in the middle of that, but those were kind of scuttled by the Bush era financial collapse. So I think that's an important part of the context for how long it took to build something there as well.
It's interesting just to end on this, and then when we come back, I want to talk because there is a special election today. So we'll get to that after the break. But one thing I just would love your input on as someone who is very, very pro Milwaukee and very involved in so many of the conversations that happen around the evolution of the city. Our mutual friend Isaac Rowlett tweeted this out this morning, and I just wanted to get your reaction from it. It says, "We don't talk enough about how many of the most powerful people in our cities actually live in the suburbs. And no judgment, that's totally their choice. I just wish we did a better job prioritizing perspectives of city residents in decisions we make about our cities." And do you think that's unique to Milwaukee as far as how many of our business leaders, there's also loopholes as far as having two addresses. Like, I think we all know that when Bob Donovan ran, he was actually also living in Glendale or Greendale. And so, like, just as before we go to the break, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, we see a lot of, especially I think leaders in the business community, who are residents of the suburbs and have a lot to say about the city of Milwaukee. And one of the points that one of the leaders on the panel yesterday from Milwaukee Department of Development was saying that one of the top comments that they saw in this process for their downtown plan was, we need to plan for Milwaukee for Milwaukeeans. We need to do this for Milwaukeeans and not just make it 2 minutes easier and make your 2-minute commute from the suburbs that much easier. So I think we need to really be focusing on Milwaukeeans when we plan for Milwaukee.
I agree. All right. Well, when we come back, Dan Shafer will still be here to recombobulate on today's special election and maybe what the tea leaves say, depending on what the results are. So stay tuned. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
It's time to turn Fridays into Fri-yays with WAUK.halfoffdeal.com. You'll find deals for spots around town like restaurants, spas, and events. This Friday at 8 a.m., you'll save 50% on tickets to the Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd on the lakefront at Bradford Beach. That's right, save 50% on tickets for this year's Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd. The Milwaukee Air and Water Show continues to be Wisconsin's premier free family event of the summer and one of the top air shows in the Midwest. Gates open up at 9 a.m. both days. Have a splash with the water show from 10 to 11:30. Be amazed with the air show at 12 p.m. and witness the Blue Angels around 3 p.m. For more details about the event, log on mkeairwatershow.com. Save 50%. See the show, the Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd on the lakefront at Bradford Beach. Save this Friday at 8 a.m. at WAUK.halfoffdeal.com. That's WAUK.halfoffdeal.com.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with highs around 80. Westerly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Lows around 57 tonight, mainly clear. Mainly sunny skies and calm. Tomorrow, daytime highs approaching 83. Highs level off around 83 Thursday with a chance for scattered thunderstorms. 80, mainly sunny skies and calm Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 68.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and we are doing our weekly segment with Dan Shafer where we recombobulate, because that is the name of his Substack, Recombobulation Area. Is that how you're describing it now? Is it still an online weekly column? I feel like it's so much more than that.
Yeah, weekly column and online publication is the way I'm characterizing. I need
and
to
sometimes podcast.
I need to figure, and sometimes podcast, and sometimes other things. And
live events.
Milwaukee Press Club Award winner for best blog. So I don't know if maybe it's just a blog. Maybe it's just a blog. Yeah.
There's something so pedestrian around the word of just calling it a blog, especially because you've won a Milwaukee Press Club 10 times now.
For the Recombobulation Area, I've had 10 awards. Yes.
So, but you should subscribe. If you are not already subscribed to the Recombobulation Area, you should go ahead and do that. It's only $5 a month.
$5 a month. Yep.
It's a latte.
We even love our free subscribers too. Most of our content is free. Making that $5 a month commitment is just saying that you support our work and you want to help us grow and support independent media in Milwaukee and Wisconsin.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you had a tweet thread this morning. Was it also an IG or was it also a meta thread? But
not yet. I'll make it over there eventually. Zuckerberg can wait.
Copy and paste. About today's special election, which has gotten not a ton of attention. So, but it's still important. And I think I would love to just hear in the time that we have what you think today's results could tell us going into next year.
Yeah, I think it's It's an interesting race because if you look back a couple of years ago, in 2020, the race for the 24th Assembly District was one of the most competitive in the state. And incumbent Representative Dan Knodel won re-election by just over 1,000 votes. And he was against Democrat Emily Segrist. It was less than 2% margin. But then redistricting happened. And redistricting really changed the makeup of this district significantly. It went for one that was, kind of a Republican-leaning competitive district to one where the Republicans had a huge double-digit 20-point advantage. And that's what happened in the 2022 election when Dan Knodel was reelected. He won by a margin of more than 20 points, 20%. But then he, of course, went on to run for the open state Senate district. So people in Grafton and Menominee Falls and Germantown have really been voting in legislative races quite a bit in this last year. Thinking back to the midterm last year, the special election that was a part of the spring ballot, and now this one. So a lot of voting if you live in Grafton or Germantown or a number of these district communities that make up this district. But I think this is, just yet another test case for kind of shifting political leanings, the political dynamics of the WOW counties. This is the district that includes pieces of Ozaukee, Washington, and Waukesha County. So as those counties have continued to shift to the left, and significantly so in the spring election, it's going to be interesting to see if this will again be another 20-point margin of victory for Republicans, or if Democrats can narrow that gap or even pull off something really unexpected. It's a special election. Who knows what might happen? But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here because of the shifts happening.
Absolutely. And also, I read this morning. I thought I heard this, but then I read it and confirmed it. The Democrat has outraised the Republican in the race. And so Bob Tatterson has reported $103,000 raised in, I think, the last reporting period versus the Republican, Paul Melitik, is closer to like half that. So that's interesting to me.
It's going to be a factor. I think, it's going to be, even if the Tatterson doesn't win here, like this is going to be an election that's going to be on the ballot next fall. That, the recombobulation area will surely preview, along with the 100 plus other races on the ballot for the state legislature. So I think, even if the Democrat doesn't do the unexpected and pull off the upset here, this is about building long-term infrastructure for political change. And it's important to show up in every election. If it's a double-digit margin, let's get it to a single-digit margin for next time. Every election matters, and it's all about building that momentum for the long term.
Absolutely. All right. Well, looking forward, and now moving to looking back. You have an event on Friday, this Friday, right?
This coming Friday at the Cooperage. The Recombobulation area and Milwaukee Record are joining forces once again to rewatch the 2021 NBA Finals, Game 6. We're just going to make it an annual event and celebrate it every year. It's the greatest moment in Milwaukee sports history.
Never forget.
It's the only finals to happen in the middle of summer. So we're just going to celebrate it every year. We're just going to celebrate Giannis scoring 50 points and bringing the championship home to Milwaukee every year. And so it's a free event at the Cooperage on Friday. Come relive the greatest moment in Milwaukee sports history. You're laughing at me.
I'm laughing because I love all of you guys. I love Milwaukee Record. I love you. I love that we won 2 years ago, but I'm also just like, how many years in a row are you going to do this before it becomes like a little sad?
Every year, Kristen. We're going to do it every year. It's going to be an annual event. We're going to rewatch Giannis making those free throws, making his darn free throws in that game. We're gonna watch it every year. It's not gonna get old. It's not old yet for.
It's not old yet, but there is like parts of this, and I honestly, if we weren't going out of town this weekend, I'd probably still come just because I would be excited to see like friends who are probably gonna go. But there is a little bit of it that like high school quarterback keeps watching his like high school games, even though he's 35.
True. There's a little bit of element to that. But you know what? It's the only Milwaukee professional sports championship of my lifetime.
Fair.
So we are going to celebrate it. It is not often until the Bucks win again, which, fingers crossed for next season with a new coach and all that. Maybe the next year we will be celebrating 2 championships when we do this goofy event in the middle of summer next year.
I love it. All right, Dan Shafer, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll have you back next week at the same time. And for now, we're going to take a break for the top of the hour news. But when we come back, talking about a new recycling technique that could help keep flexible plastics out of landfills. We're going to be talking to UW-Madison engineering professor George Huber. So stick around for that conversation. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Bucks and 6.
Bucks and 6.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
Fear you may be missing out? We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. Enjoy listening live or catch up by finding the podcast at civicmedia.us or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.
You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. Former President Trump reveals on social media he's received a target letter from the Justice Department. CBS's Scott McFarlane reports it's about the investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
The target letter is an indication that charges are not just possible, but imminent. Former president put the news out himself in the process, trying to characterize it, accusing the target letter and the special counsel of being a Biden administration overreach, a political targeting of Donald Trump. He also criticized the fact that he got the target letter, he says, on a Sunday while he was at a political event.
Trump got a similar letter ahead of being charged in the classified documents case. There's a court hearing on that case today in Florida. A U.S. official confirms that an American who crossed the border into North Korea today is a U.S. soldier, someone who was being sent back to the U.S. for disciplinary reasons, but slipped away and hooked up with a border tour. CBS's Haley Ott spoke to someone who was part of that tour group.
You can go to this area as a tourist. And this person said that they had just finished seeing one of the buildings in the DMZ when a gentleman nearby laughed really loudly and then ran off onto the North Korean side of the DMZ, of the border.
The UN command believes he's now in North Korean custody. Records keep on falling in Phoenix in the triple-digit heat wave that's been making life tough for almost 3 weeks. There's searing heat in California, too, and Jeff Smith of Pacific Gas and Electric says it's a strain for utilities.
You've got really hot temperatures that don't cool down at night. That can be really taxing on the electrical equipment.
The government's approved a new long-acting drug to protect babies and toddlers against the respiratory virus known as RSV. CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder says it's already being used in Canada and Europe.
It's being given for prevention, and in clinical trials, reduce the risk of hospitalization among these very young infants by over 80%.
Now to Israel, where Prime Minister Netanyahu vows to crack down on some who've joined the effort to protest his plans to overhaul the country's judiciary.
Among the demonstrators are thousands of pilots, cyber warfare experts, and elite combat soldiers who say they will no longer do reserve duty if the changes go through. Some in Israel say the protests have already affected Israel's combat readiness. Linda Gradstein for CBS News, Jerusalem.
A former Northwestern football player has filed the first lawsuit in the hazing scandal that's rocked the school. Checking Wall Street right now, the Dow is up 333 points. The S&P is up 13. This is CBS News.
Find great hires fast with Indeed. Their end-to-end hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in the same place. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
Looking for more local programming? Check out our website, civicmedia.us, to see our entire lineup.
With news on WAUK, The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles, and here's what you need to know. The Connecting Milwaukee proposal aimed at doubling the population in downtown by 2040 has received approval from the Plan Commission. The multi-million-dollar plan involves significant changes to the downtown area, including wider sidewalks, redesigned streets, and the expansion of the Hop. A public hearing on the proposal is scheduled for July 25th. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson says he wants to do more to help the people in his city and maybe across the state.
Being a political realist, again, going back to that theme, is that there's only so much that you can do from here.
Mayor Johnson spoke before the Milwaukee Press Club last week and touched on his intentions to one day seek higher office and mentioned the governor's office in his comments. For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry.
The issue with Milwaukee schools, just not enough high quality schools.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
You can talk about everything else. You can talk about the funding. You can talk about school choice and for it or against it. But there's not enough Hope Christian schools. There's not enough St. Marcus schools. There's not enough Kings. There's not enough Reagans. And until we fix that, Milwaukee Public Schools really isn't going to change.
As Goes Wisconsin with host Kristen Bry on Civic Media and the Civic Media app.
Hey, Dan Kelly, you went around the state saying there had been fraud and the election should be overturned. You did that. You took $120 grand in pay from the Republican Party, not in a donation, pay. The most recent payment was in December, and we don't know if you're still being paid. And you've been endorsed by some of the biggest election deniers in the state. And you're shining me with, I don't know how I rule. I know how you'd rule. I know how you'd rule.
Matt Flynn Direct, weekday afternoons from 3 until 4. On the Civic Media Network and on the Civic Media app.
Missed your favorite show live on air? It's easy to find what you enjoy wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google.
I don't think I've had any terrible jobs. What about you?
What? I was a thistle picker on the pea line at a local cannery.
A thistle, say that 5 times fast. A thistle picker on the pea line. So let's just start there.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of As Goes Wisconsin. I am your host, Kristen Bry, along with Jane Matnair on the board. And if you have watched 60 Minutes or any environmental documentary, you've probably seen the tons and tons of plastics that gets accumulated in landfills and in our oceans. And it's largely because a lot of our plastics can't be recycled. Some can, but a lot can't. But now there is a University of Wisconsin-Madison professor and a Green Bay company that are working together to upscale a new recycling technique that could help keep flexible plastics out of landfills. And so I'm so excited to welcome UW-Madison Chemical and Biological Engineering professor George Huber to the show to talk about this project and this process. How are you doing, Professor Huber?
I'm doing great, Kristen. Thank you for having me on the show.
So this sounds very nerdy, but also very important. And so I'm excited to talk to you. And before we jump into what the process, the technique is, why is it that so many of our plastics can't be recycled?
Yeah, it's because there's such a wide variety of plastics that we use and produce. We really live today in the plastic age. We use plastic in our clothing. Our cars are basically made of different plastics. Our computers are made of plastics. Everything's packaged in plastics, but they're all different types of plastics that we produce. And then, we put all these colors in your plastics to make our products sell better on the store, and that makes it more challenging to recycle.
And so, because you do think about that. I think about just the packaging of just groceries, how much plastic you go through just in a single grocery trip, of the smaller bag to separate your produce, and then that goes into a bigger bag, and the packaging on, like, you have to undo plastic to get through some of your food. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that we're talking about when we talk about flexible plastic, right? Like, that's the kind of wrappers and packaging that we can't recycle.
Yeah, that's right. There's rigid plastics like your water bottle. And most organizations will take rigid plastics that are at least clear and clean and a single component. But flexible packages like your grocery bags are more challenging to recycle. You're starting to see some stores like Target and Pick and Save starting to set up bins to recycle, to start collecting those flexible packages, at least the monolayer flexible package. But most of your flexible packages, several layers. So you put several different packages together, and that makes you use less packaging material, makes your food last longer, your healthcare products stay safer, but it's more challenging to recycle. So. Absolutely.
So then I read this in an article where I found out about the project that you guys are working on. Wisconsin has a big industry for packaging, right?
Yeah, our football team is the Packers, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why we're the Packers. It's because we're good at packaging things. The first thing we packaged a lot of things was cardboard and glass. Over time, that's shifted to package more and more plastics, package more and more things in plastic, mainly because it's cheaper. Your products last longer. And we don't manufacture these plastics in Wisconsin. Most of them are manufactured in Texas, but there's whole train cars and barges being sent to Wisconsin with huge pellets where we make a wide variety of packaging material. A lot of innovations in plastic packaging, how to package cheese, how to package different materials has really happened in Wisconsin. It's a super important industry in Wisconsin. And I think in the whole US, we're the number 3rd state in flexible packaging materials.
Wow. I did not know that. There's always like certain exports, like when you find out that like we're like the number 1 exporter of cranberries or bovine genetics, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's more than just cheese and brats. So then what is solvent targeted recovery and precipitation?
Yeah, so the challenge with plastics is you have contamination, you have mixture. Okay, so you can imagine one challenge is the shrink wrap you put around boxes. You put that shrink wrap around, there's dirt that gets in there, there's adhesives that get stuck in there. We can take solvents. Okay, so we pick a solvent, it absorbs the polyethylene, leaves behind the dirt. We precipitate it out, and then we make a pure plastic material that can then be recycled for the virgin material. Or we have in these flexible packages, oftentimes they're what's called multi-layer material. So you'll add what's called an oxygen barrier. The oxygen barrier helps your food last longer. Okay, a lot of energy goes to produce the food. So we can pull out the polyethylene, pull out the oxygen barrier. Well, you can't recycle that multi-layer film. That multi-layer film right now has to go to landfill or be burned. So we have a technology to be able to recycle that. It uses a solvent. We design a solvent to basically pull out the plastic we want and leave behind everything else. That we then precipitate it, and then we can remake the original packaging material.
That sounds fast. Like I said, very nerdy, but fascinating. So basically, this can replace the pack, like the saran wrap type things that I keep thinking of the plastic wrap that used to come on CDs. Of course, we don't buy CDs anymore, but that kind of plastic wrap, this could replace that.
Yeah, or you could remake that flexible food packaging. You buy your potato chips and a multi-layer plastic packaging material. We can pull out different components of that, and then you could remake that potato chip bag. And right now you can't. That potato chip bag, it's very complex. There's several different layers. There's actually about 20 different layers that go into making that potato chip bag. A lot of science, a lot of technology go into making that potato chip bag, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
That is fascinating. I had no idea. Go ahead, Jane.
So if we just had one design for a bag of Cheetos Puffs that was clear, that just had black printing on it, would that alleviate the need for all of these layers?
Well, you could do that, and companies are doing that, but that will require you to make a thicker plastic material. So you'll actually have to add more plastic to do that. So what the industry does is they add these different layers together to prevent less oxygen, prevent water going on. People like their bags to open up easily, close easily. Printing is very challenging. We like products that look nice on the shelf. People will pay more for a product that has fancier printing on the shelf. Making it simpler printing will make it easier to be recycled. But we like that, that marketing aspect of the product that we make.
So then the acronym is called STRAP for the process that you guys have created. So it's done. It works. But now basically the next step is to figure out a way to actually commercialize it and have companies use this method.
Well, there's actually a team of researchers here at University of Wisconsin. We have really one of the best engineering schools in the country here who are really working on this. We have a lot of different companies who are focused on this. Actually, the three largest manufacturers of polyethylene and polypropylene are sitting down helping us design this. Amcor, who's in Neenah, Wisconsin, their U.S. headquarters. They're the world's largest packaging manufacturers helping us with this. So there are so many different types of materials to do. We've demonstrated in the laboratory. We've taken our products back to the manufacturer, tested them, remade film in Amcor. But it took us about 4 months to produce 2 pounds of material.
Okay.
The company wants us to make ton quantities of material. So we can't do that in the university setting. At University of Wisconsin, we don't have the resources. So we've designed a system at Michigan Tech University to be able to produce 25 kilograms an hour of recycled material. And then after that, we think when we've designed most of that, we built maybe 70% of the system. We hope next year it'll be operational and we can successfully demonstrate this on a larger scale. And then after that, we hope to build a 500 kilogram per hour system in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We have a location picked out. We have customers who want the product, who will be providing us with feedstock. It looks economical. It has lower greenhouse gas emissions, 60 to 70% lower greenhouse gas emissions. The plastic industry is critical for Wisconsin, and we want to make sure the plastic recycling industry stays in Wisconsin.
So in your experience, obviously, we're talking to UW-Madison chemical and biological engineering professor, George Huber. So you were on the science, research, development side of plastics. When you've worked with plastic companies, like in your experience, is there the good faith desire for plastic companies to find more renewable ways that are still economical to do this? Because sometimes you think of as you see those pictures of just so much plastic and you think of there has to why is there not more of an effort to just use less or find different ways? Is that effort there and it's just behind the scenes for most of the public?
Yeah, there is a tremendous amount of effort right now. It's mainly being driven by consumers. Our consumers are demanding more and more recycled material. We really don't think about end of life use when we buy products. We don't think about what happens. We go to the grocery store or we go shopping, we buy something, but we don't think about what happens at end of life use of our products. And especially with the plastic industry, it's a huge challenge for them. And they are very concerned about some of the challenge. There's legislation coming up. Europe is way ahead of us than I think we are in the U.S. with some of these technologies. But it's a critical thing. I think we need to rethink about plastics is how can we make the plastic industry more sustainable. The companies are investing some money. Of course, we'd like them to continue to invest money and invest in the strap technology and make that here in Wisconsin.
Absolutely. I mean, because I think that's the thing that's exciting about this is not only is the research happening at UW-Madison in Wisconsin, but it's also could directly benefit, a huge industry, as we just said, as far as it being the third biggest state with packaging, to really be innovative and like at the front lines of trying to balance convenience and all of the things that plastics give us while still being able to not just pollute.
Yeah, no, that's right. And the packaging manufacturers, they're going back to your comment, making the materials of a single material, that's more easy to recycle, but it's thicker, it costs more, and it's not as good for the environment. So it's hard.
All right. Absolutely. Well, George, this was so much fun. It's super interesting. I can't wait to see how this develops and, potentially in a couple years, see this be a commercialized process. So Professor George Huber works at UW-Madison as a chemical and biological engineering professor. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks, Kristen.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
It's time to turn Fridays into Fri-yays with WAUK.halfoffdeal.com. You'll find deals for spots around town like restaurants, spas, and events. This Friday at 8 a.m., you'll save 50% on tickets to the Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd on the lakefront at Bradford Beach. That's right, save 50% on tickets for this year's Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd. The Milwaukee Air and Water Show continues to be Wisconsin's premier free family event of the summer and one of the top air shows in the Midwest. Gates open up at 9 a.m. both days. Have a splash with the water show from 10 to 11:30. Be amazed with the air show at 12 p.m. and witness the Blue Angels around 3 p.m. For more details about the event, log on mkeairwatershow.com. Save 50%. See the show, the Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd on the lakefront at Bradford Beach. Save this Friday at 8 a.m. at WAUK.halfoffdeal.com. That's WAUK.halfoffdeal.com.
Hi, I'm Mandy Roberts, financial advisor with Thrivent. I'm here to help you assess your finances and find solutions to meet your needs. Let's ensure you have a strategy for success. To get started, call 715-470-1303. That's 715-470-1303.
You're listening to a radio station that's part of the Civic Media Network. Find more at civicmedia.us.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with highs around 80. Westerly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Lows around 57 tonight, mainly clear. Mainly sunny skies and calm tomorrow. Daytime highs approaching 83. Highs level off around 83 Thursday with a chance for scattered thunderstorms. 80, mainly sunny skies and calm Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 70.
A man lives at the corner of the street, and his neighbours think he's helpful and he's sweet. But he never swears and he always shakes your ball.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jade Matinaire. Did you know that we did that much packaging here?
No, and actually we didn't have a chance to get him on the air, but Paul called, who works in the packaging industry, and who knew this was so incredibly complicated. he was explaining some of the processes to me and all of the layers, and I just had no idea. And Paul said as well, just like Professor Huber, that packaging is a big industry in Wisconsin.
Wait.
Look at what we learn.
But look at what we learn some days when you're just
I know.
curious and you're like, we may lose some listeners during this topic, but I'm going to learn something.
I think it's just fascinating. I really do.
And so, yeah, and I think it's so fascinating to take also the leap from, the type of research that happens at our university system. And I think about the different professors that we've had on, the different scientists we've had on. Like, I think back to the professor we had on who was studying mice on coke.
Oh, yes.
and the translation that hopefully eventually happens from that research into daily lives. And it is a process, right? Like, as Professor Huber was saying, being able to take what they've developed and apply the economies of scale, be able to actually quickly, economically produce the amount that they would need to produce for this to be a viable replacement. And like how you take things out of academia and into the mainstream, and like the obstacles that come with that. And that's why I thought it was an interesting story as far as what they're developing, and also working alongside with like actual private businesses that are invested in trying to also see if there's a more viable, sustainable way to do this.
I just am so impressed by the long-term dedication and the patience of these researchers, because you don't get results you may never get the end result before you die. And instead of throwing up their hands and saying, yeah, I'm going to do something easier, they just keep at it. I'm really awestruck by that.
Especially as someone who has ADHD and is constantly interested in like multiple things, but never dives too deep in any of it. It's like, it's amazing to me the dedication to one topic that some people can just like have that laser focus in for decades of their life.
Seriously.
Because I'm like, on to the next thing very quickly. So
that's why we cover a lot of topics on this show.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not an expert in literally anything.
But you know a lot about a lot of stuff.
I can have a conversation about a lot of different things, but shallow.
And this is again why we bring on the experts.
The experts. So speaking of packaging and Wisconsin, coming to a cereal aisle near you soon, former Badgers JJ and TJ Watt are going to make history next month as the first pair of brothers featured on a Wheaties box.
That is pretty cool. That really is.
It is cool, especially because I think everything, unless they are very good at hiding it, and especially JJ, how good of people they are and how much they give back. It's easy to root for them. But obviously JJ retired from the NFL last year after 11 seasons and 3 defensive player wins of the year. And then TJ is entering his 7th season with the Steelers and is a 4-time All-Pro selection. And the box hits shelves in August. So
are you a dry cereal eater?
Funny you should ask that, Jane. So we'll just go quickly on this tangent before in our next segment, we're actually going to have a childcare success story and an example of when the community can come together and solve this issue. But before we get to that in the next segment, let me tell you, for growing up, yes. And I haven't bought a box of cereal in so long until this week. And so I've gone through I don't have any weird cravings so much as far as the pregnancy stuff. Like there's
no pickles
like pickles and ice cream or like weird combinations. But I've just gone through phases. Like I went through a watermelon phase, but I was very disappointed. Like I've yet to be able to find a good watermelon. I've looked up so many YouTube videos on how to pick a good watermelon, and I feel like I'm following all the advice. And I think they're just getting picked too soon to like meet demand in the grocery stores. So I've gone through that. I now am making my own Italian ice at home because I'm going through like a chewing on ice phase. And I'm also going on, like, as of this week, a cereal phase because my heartburn's back. And so I have to find things that I can like eat, and like milk helps a lot.
Sure.
And so like and so I looked up like what can you eat when you have heartburn? And it's basically like whole grains, milk. What else is on that list? I don't know. There's a ton of stuff that just flares it up. So like right now, it's not even that I'm craving cereal so much as it's like this is one thing that is somewhat healthy that I can eat. If I get cereal that doesn't have a huge amount of sugar in it,
Sure,
and milk. And so that is my phase that I am in for at least this week is dry cereal like I'm 7 years old.
Well, there's that, that's it's that lazy sphincter acting up again.
That lazy sphincter.
That lazy
For a little while
sphincter.
I had a reprieve, but it's back.
It's back.
It's annoying. God, it's annoying. It's painful. All right. When we come back, Gabby Sorano, who is the owner and director of the Antigo Child Care Center, is going to be here to talk about, because this is her year anniversary from when she first started the Antigo Child Care Center last year. And the story to how she got it done is a great example of collaboration and partnership with the business community. And so I'm really excited to have you hear more about that story and hear what she thinks other communities can take away from that success story. So stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Children wanna be plastic like their dad. Got a phone style that makes you think you understand, but no one ever gets the truth from Plastic Man.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup at 12:15. Wisconsin Roundtable, 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News special report. Former President Trump says on social media he's gotten a target letter from the Justice Department. CBS's Scott McFarland says it's an indication charges are imminent in the investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Key members of the Trump inner circle, including his vice president, Mike Pence, called to speak to this grand jury. There seems to be a sense here that if and when criminal charges come from Jack Smith for the January 6th component of his investigation, there could be a very large-scale case filed.
Legal analyst Jessica Levinson says a Trump-appointed judge holds a Florida hearing today in the former president's classified documents case.
The first thing I think we need to look for is which way is she leaning when it comes to scheduling? Does it look like she's favoring the former president? Does it look like she's listening to what special prosecutor Jack Smith and his team have asked for?
CBS News special report. I'm Steve Kathan.
Your home for local news, weather, and sports across the airwaves and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
With news on WAUK, The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles, and here's what you need to know. A special election is being held today in the 24th Assembly District seat. Voters in parts of Ozaukee, Washington, and Waukesha counties will have the opportunity to choose between two candidates, Democrat Bob Tatterson and Republican Paul Melitik. The seat became vacant after former Assemblyman Dan Knodel won a special election for a state Senate seat earlier this year. The DNR isn't sure when a popular trail will be back open. Melissa Kay has more.
Due to a sinkhole caused by recent rainfall, a section of the Hank Aaron State Trail is currently closed between 76th Street and 89th Street. The sinkhole poses a safety risk to trail users, and it extends deep beneath the asphalt layer. Emergency repairs, including excavation and replacement, are required before the trail can reopen.
For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
living happily ever after isn't always a reality. If you're over 50 and are considering divorce, attorney Andrea Gage with the Everson Law Firm can provide the guidance you need. Andrea focuses on silver divorces, the kind that get more complicated over time and present unique challenges. A family, multiple properties, significant assets. Andrea and the team at Everson Law have the experience to protect your interests. Call Everson Law to set up an appointment with Andrea today. It's never too late to be happy. Everson Law, 920-435-3734.
Attention, Wisconsin veterans.
Hello, I'm Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin. If you are a veteran struggling to pay for rent, utilities, or other life-sustaining services, I want you to know that the Veterans Rental Assistance Program is here to help. You have already made a most noble sacrifice. You shouldn't have to continue doing so. We are here to support you. The Veterans Rental Assistance Program was created by and for people living in Wisconsin, with benefit approvals being issued to veterans in just days, not months. It's never easy to ask for assistance, but rest assured, we're here to help. You've always been there for us. We want you to know that we're here for you. Call 833-WIS-VRAP. That's 833-947-8727, or visit vrapwi.com. On behalf of the state of Wisconsin, thank you.
It's the Max Inc. Radio Concert Series at the Waukesha County Fair, Thursday, July 20th on the Whammy and Guitars for Vet stage, featuring Iron Plow, Karma Shotgun, and Talent. Music starts at 7:30, hosted by WAUK's Don Brown.
You put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, you put your right foot in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Left foot.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and I'm so excited to talk to our next guest. We've been talking about childcare on and off for the last couple months as far as the crisis that we're in and the potential ways to fix it, and how it's, it's something that affects everyone, even those people without kids. And yet it feels like a solution that is being left to parents and childcare providers alone, despite the fact that governments and businesses have a lot to gain by actually collaborating. So we are excited to talk about an innovative solution that happened up in Antigo, Wisconsin. So Gabby Sorano is the owner and director of Antigo Child Care Center. How you doing, Gabby?
Good. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. So this is your year anniversary, right?
Yeah, it's so crazy to think. As of last week, Monday, Antigo Child Care Center has been open for 1 year already.
That is wild. And so I guess your background is in teaching, right? And teaching like the elementary school children, not daycare, before you started this center, right?
Correct. So prior to opening the center, I was a second grade teacher for the past 9 years. I grew up working in the childcare industry in high school and college, and that is kind of what brought me back into this industry.
So what was kind of the catalyst for you to say, I'm gonna go ahead and open a childcare center, despite the fact that I'm sure there were warnings as far as how hard it could be, or maybe there wasn't any warning. Maybe you just thought you could do, like, it would be needed, so there'd be a lot of support for it.
Yeah, actually, my mom was the human resources director of a child care center too, and she gave me plenty of to dive in with 2 feet anyways. So throughout COVID, our son lost his spot at a local child care center here, and Antigo is not a large city. And during COVID, so we have 2 licensed group centers here. The other center closed due to COVID and staffing and all the struggles in the industry. And it really brought to light that we don't have many options here in our community. So that I got the wild idea and ran with it since.
Well, that's what I think is so impressive, because you saw places close and yet we're like, well, we got to open another one. Because truly, as far as the people, when you would talk to people in your community, when those, including yourself, when those centers closed, like what were people even doing? Were they just quitting their jobs? Were they changing jobs? Like what was the alternative prior to you opening the Antigo Child Care Center?
Right. And I think that's where I've been working very closely with our Economic Development Corporation. And I think it was very eye-opening to a lot of people how childcare and the workforce really go hand in hand. That without childcare options in our area, families aren't able to work or have both parents in the workforce. And it really brought to light that there is that very large need in our community for childcare.
Because in your county, I think I read this, it's basically, is it even with your center open, is it still considered a childcare desert?
Yes. We actually just had a meeting with our county's childcare task force, and Langley County is considered a childcare desert. That there are approximately 650 kids in Langley County and only about 200 childcare slots available.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
including the family providers, not just group centers.
And what is the difference for people who are unsure of what the difference between family providers and centers are?
Sure. So a group center is where there are more than 7 children in the center, and a family child care provider is someone who does it out of their home.
Got it. Okay. So we're talking to Gabby Sorano, who is the owner and director of Antigo Child Care Center, which is celebrating a year of being open this month. And in the jumping for 2 feet, for face forward, whatever you want to say, as far as taking this on, what was that experience like?
I'll tell you that I would have not been able to do it without all the support of many community members. So as I've mentioned, working very closely with the Economic Development Corporation, their executive director, Angie Close, helped set me up with a lot of partnerships and collaborative relationships in our community. And also, the space that I am in is through our local housing authority, and they actually renovated the entire space on their cost to make sure that it was a safe and updated space for the center.
So some of it, I mean, as far as the challenges that come into, it's finding a space, it's finding people. What were some of the unexpected things that you thought would be easier that were actually really difficult to get done?
I'd say most recently is that the childcare industry lost our state funding. That approximately for a small center like mine, we would receive about $6,000 to $7,000 a month. Now, going into this business, I knew that wasn't guaranteed funding. That is still funds that were available from the COVID relief during that time frame. But I guess I anticipated that the pandemic and the highlight that it really brought childcare and the workforce together, that there would have been a greater push for state funding, especially if we know that parents are unable to work if they don't have childcare, that if we're funding public funding for our school-age kids, that we'd be more creative in finding a way to fund for our youngest members of our community.
Which is interesting because I feel like some of, and in times that I've either talked about this or made videos about this, some of the feedback as far as people who do not think that the government should be helping to fund this are saying that some of the obstacles, and I would love to hear your opinion on whether or not you think this is true, is like the regulations that are in, put on trying to start a childcare center or keep a childcare center running. Like, how much did you find the actual regulations to be an issue in this process?
The startup process is very tedious. It is definitely a process where I always said that the analogy of my ducks were all floating in a pond, but they had to get in line at the right time. So one step couldn't happen prior to the other. And I think that there are definitely obstacles in the childcare industry of being able to become regulated that could have better help per se. So for example, you can't open your center until you have a building inspection, and you need a commercial licensed building inspector. And there are not many in the state of Wisconsin, and they're extremely expensive. So perhaps, finding the resources to make those people more readily available, or at least a compiled list of people who you could go to. I mean, I think I've reached out to 13 or more people to try to find someone just for that one step in the
Wow.
process.
So there's some credence to that, as far as like there's ways that we could make this easier for people as they're starting these businesses.
Yes. And I will say that I've worked with our child resource and referral agency, which in my area is Child Caring out of Mosinee, and they provide any technical assistance that you need. So any questions that I need to be answered, they provided like a mock licensing visit to make sure I was ready to go so that I would pass inspection and all sorts of things like that. So there are agencies throughout the state in different regional areas that are willing to support you and help you. It just takes that collaboration to make that work.
Got it. Okay. So getting back to your story, as far as, you certainly had the initiative to do this on your own, but did not do it alone. As far as there was agencies involved, there was grants involved. I know I think I read that you got the Mainstream Bounce Back grant. There was a GoFundMe campaign, but even all of that, despite how much support people had, it still wasn't enough. And so you actually took the extra step to get businesses involved. So what does that partnership look like with the community businesses?
Sure. So I guess I always like to use the term that the childcare industry is such a broken business model. So why are parents paying so much money, yet daycare centers need more funding and teachers are making so little? So if you think about, say you have a center of, I have 35 kids here and parents pay approximately $10,000 a year. That brings you up, to the $350,000. But that has to also include food, maintenance, operating costs, supplies, materials, things like that, besides paying for staff's payroll. So the average teacher and average early childhood educator in Wisconsin makes approximately $11 to $12 an hour, which is something they could make more down the road at Quick Trip here in Wisconsin, and receive benefits, which is something a small business is unable to provide. So finding a solution to filling in that broken business model gap of being able to pay my staff what I feel is a more deserved wage, yet still not enough, is something that I was hoping to fill with creating business partnerships in our community.
So how does it work? Like, what is the backstory? Like, what does the business get? What does the Antigo Child Care Center get?
Sure. So in our we have a tiered model in the child care industry. Each classroom has a maximum capacity, and making the system a tiered model sets priority to which business gets which spot at which time. So the business signs a contract with us as a partnership agreement. They stipend the center funding on a monthly or quarterly basis, and that gives them priority on our waiting list. So when we first opened the center, each business in our partnership had a time frame. So the first tiered partnership had X amount of days for their employees to sign up so that they received the first spots. And then from then on, now that the center is at full capacity, if an employee of that business signs up on our waiting list, they bump in front of everybody else. So our waiting list is currently at 36 kids. If one of our business partnership employees would register, they would bump to the first spot, which gives them a more realistic time frame. If I can't accept them immediately, maybe I have more of like a 3 to 6 month time frame than an unknown at that point. And from what I've heard through our partnership with the Antigo School District is that has been a priceless component in the partnership of being able to at least have a time frame of knowing when they would be able to get into a child care center versus not knowing at all.
Got it. So I guess we're running out of time, but what do you think other communities or child care centers can take away with what you have found to be successful? Do you feel like this is a model that could be replicated at other centers?
Actually, I have had multiple centers, cities, counties reach out to me about the business model, looking into how they could implement it in their area. And it's a little tricky in smaller communities, I definitely say, but it is something that I know has been already implemented in other areas of the state. And I hope that we can continue being creative and finding ways to help fill in that broken business model.
Absolutely, because I do think, I mean, I feel like there is so much to be gained from the businesses as far as being involved in solving this problem. And this was one of the first stories, at least I heard of, where there was that collaboration and partnership. And so that's why I wanted to have you on the show so we could bring more awareness of like, hey, look, there's a
Yeah,
way.
they definitely promote it as like an attraction and retention tool for their employees.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Gabby Sorano is the owner and director of Antigo Child Care Center. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. With the minute we have left, is there anything else you want our listeners to know about childcare in Wisconsin?
I would definitely say if anybody's interested in even opening an in-home child care center, there's so many resources for you and grants and funding and mentors that are willing to help you get started. So I'd definitely reach out to your local child resource and referral agency for all the support, and it's not as hard as you'd think.
Well, there you go. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Gabby.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we are going to take one more break. And when we come back, we will wrap up today's show. Stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
That's what it's all about. Hokey pokey. You do the hokey pokey. The hokey pokey. You do the hokey pokey. That's what it's all about.
It's time to turn Fridays into Fri-Yays with WAUK.halfoffdeal.com. You'll find deals for spots around town like restaurants, spas, and events. This Friday at 8 a.m., you'll save 50% on tickets to the Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd on the lakefront at Bradford Beach. That's right, save 50% on tickets for this year's Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd. The Milwaukee Air and Water Show continues to be Wisconsin's premier free family event of the summer and one of the top air shows in the Midwest. Gates open up at 9 a.m. both days. Have a splash with the water show from 10 to 11:30. Be amazed with the air show at 12 p.m. and witness the Blue Angels around 3 p.m. For more details about the event, log on mkeairwatershow.com. Save 50%. See the show, the Milwaukee Air and Water Show, July 22nd and 23rd on the lakefront at Bradford Beach. Save this Friday at 8 a.m. at WAUK.halfoffdeal.com. That's WAUK.halfoffdeal.com.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Partly cloudy this afternoon with the high of 80. Winds out of the west, 5 to 10 miles an hour. 57 tonight, mainly clear skies. Mainly sunny skies and calm again tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 83. High temperatures reach up to 83 Thursday with a chance for scattered thunderstorms. 80, lots of sun.
Jane, are you familiar at all with Hanlon's razor? The
Is it a philosophical
term,
thing or is it an
philosophical concept that says never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity?
Oh, I love it.
And I read this story this morning, and all I could think of was that. A quote from the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense is aware of this issue and takes all unauthorized disclosures of controlled national security information or controlled unclassified information seriously. And that does sound serious, but in this case, the government isn't worried about intentional leakers doling out classified docs. Instead, it's concerned about careless typists.
What?
So it turns out that the domain for the country of Mali, so the African country,
right,
is
which is
very
aligned
close.
and it's aligned with Russia, right?
It's
Mali
very
is
aligned with
aligned
Russia. Is very close to that of the military. So Mali, the country, is .ml, and the military, the U.S. military, is .mil. So millions of emails meant for military personnel have been going to the West African nation instead. Some containing sensitive information like passwords and high-ranking officers' travel plans. This was reported by the Financial Times. The Dutch entrepreneur contracted to manage Mali's domain has been sounding the alarm about this leak potential for a decade, but his contract is almost up, meaning all emails will soon go straight to Mali's government, which, as you said, is closely allied with Russia.
That's
so Jane,
crazy.
Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity, even with our U.S. military.
And this guy's been talking about this for a decade.
Yeah, apparently. But it's just, I have someone in my life who loves everything can be explained by the higher plan, like the conspiracy, and not that there's not secrets that the government keeps from the general public, but it's just, I always come back to that philosophical thing, because you know what I also think about a lot is that quote from Michelle Obama when she was interviewed, of when she first got into the White House and was taking meetings and was the first lady, and at first was so intimidated because you're sitting with heads of state and people who are heads of departments and people with these incredible resumes. And in that interview, she said, and ultimately you find out that a lot of these people are not that smart.
That's
and
something. That's something we all knew deep down inside.
Yeah, and just the. I think about that of some of the people that I remember from tech that had very high, hoity-toity jobs, but it's you talk to them and you're like, you're not that impressive. And so whenever I hear the conspiracy of how related and planned and coordinated everything is, it's have you met people?
Giving them way too much credit, right?
You're giving them a lot of credit to be able to pull this off when I've worked at companies and it's hard to get people to walk in one straight line, let alone entire conspiratorial taking over the world or trying to keep you under your thumb. It's most people just exist within the system that they exist in instead of being able to control mass amounts of people and information.
A mastermind.
Masterminds, yes. And so I thought that was concerning, but also kind of funny.
Just make sure you get those email addresses right, folks. That's important.
It's funny because you think about the amount of times people try to send me an email and are so confused of why I didn't respond to them. And it's simply because they spelled my name with an E instead of an I.
Little mistakes.
So Christian with an E, I will not receive your email if you and apparently it goes somewhere. So if it's Kristen.Bry and someone has that email because it doesn't bounce and people just don't get a response and are very confused until they text me or somehow get a hold of me and they say, why didn't you get my email? And it's well, how did you spell it? And they're oh,
whoops,
my bad.
One little thing.
Spell check, people. All right. Well, coming up for tomorrow's show, Greg Bach will be here. And I think tomorrow we're going to play a game, which I'm excited about. I think we're going to dive into the new state fair foods and have some rankings as far as what we would or would not try. So that's coming up tomorrow along with the news. But yeah, and so coming up, well, go ahead, Jen.
I just wanted to remind you that when we talked to our guest last week from the Waukesha County Fair, tomorrow is National Corn Dog Day.
Tomorrow is National Corn Dog Day, and tomorrow is also the first day of the fair.
I think we need to go get a corn dog after the show.
We may have to go get a corn dog post show. That does sound like something that would give me heartburn, though.
You will never know unless you try.
Worth it.
Yeah,
worth it.
Totally
I've never been one until now who has to make those decisions as far as like, I'm lactose intolerant, but worth it to have that cheese curd. Or like, and so now I understand the plight of people who make those trade-offs between how good something tastes and how it's going to make you feel later.
The Eternals, yeah. Are you willing to make that sacrifice is what it comes down to.
And I feel like for a Waukesha County Fair corn dog, I think I could make that happen. I can't promise I'm jumping on like a theme, like a ride afterwards, but
I'm cool with that.
You know, what are the twisters? What's the one, like the egg crate one where you're flipping around and like the entire thing is moving?
Oh yeah.
It feels like an immediate way to throw up at this point.
Yes. At any
Absolutely.
point.
All right. Well, coming up next is the noon newscast, and then we got Town Call, and then the Todd Alba Show starts at 1:00, followed by Matt Flynn, and then of course Devil's Advocates and the Maggie Dawn Show. So still a full day of great topics, great shows, great hosts. But as for us, that'll do it for us today. Thank you for calling. Thank you for texting. Thank you for being part of the show. Thank you to our guests, Dan Shafer, Professor Huber, and Gabby Sorano. And come back tomorrow when we'll do it all again at 10 a.m. This has been